great day already, and we're going to continue the celebration. Today, we do celebrate the 133rd birthday of Washington State University. This morning, we got to live out a little bit of our land grant mission, and we'll talk about that a bit. It's great to have you here. Thank you for participating today. And without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and ask our 11th president of Washington State University, President Dr. Kurt Schultz, to join us here at the podium. Thank you.
It says here, say something nice about Daryl. Okay, anyway, Daryl, thanks for the introduction, and thank you all for coming. This is the 14th State of the University address I've done as a president, 7 at Kansas State, and now my 7th here. And I think, you know, if you ever had that dream where you missed all your exams because you slept through them, you know, I think I always worry I'm going to do one of these and nobody's going to show up. So thank you all for coming. And to the folks that are with us online, thank you for joining us from throughout the state or wherever you might be. So today the format and what we're going to do is I'm going to spend just a few minutes on a couple kind of key things that I think are important for us moving forward. And then we're going to spend the majority of the time, Daryl and I are going to respond to some questions that were submitted in advance about things that faculty, staff, and students are concerned about or they want additional information. And I think every time I've done one of these, I think I've done 14 different formats. We always tweak it a little bit. But we've sort of found I could go 40 minutes and describe lots of wonderful, terrific accomplishments and things. But really being able to do a little bit conversational in tone, I think is really, really important. So that'll be a little bit today. So if you go, wow, it's only about 10 slides, where is all the other content? We really just want to have that time to spend around things that are important to the Cougar family. So Daryl mentioned that it was really a great start to the day. When went over to a standing room only crowd to really celebrate the introduction of a pediatrics residency program, the 3rd residency program for the LCNS Floyd College of Medicine, the 3rd of what we hope to be many more, and I gave some numbers this morning, and Jim kind of, you know, started like that. But I think this represents our continued commitment to serving rural and underserved communities, and I think we're going to continue to be doing these types of things. It's also neat to participate at least a little bit in the development of partnerships. I'm a big believer that partnerships are the way for public and private higher education to make a difference in states. I believe that in every job I've had, and I think today you really saw it. You saw WSU, Providence Sacred Heart, Primera Blue Cross, the Community Cancer Fund of Spokane, just to name 4 major partners that all have played philanthropic roles or administrative roles, everybody bringing something different to the table. And I think this community has wanted a pediatrics residency program for decades. And I think how they got it was these partnerships coming together, leadership of Jim and Daryl and others, and I just think it's a great way to start our 133rd birthday celebration with a major announcement like that. I also like the little, yes, there you go. I also want to acknowledge the land on which we sit and occupy today as a traditional home of the Spokane Tribal Nation. We take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers of this land. It's also Women's History Month, and I want to take this opportunity to once again shout out all the incredible women leaders that we have across the WSU system. It's my pleasure to work with so many of them, and if I look at where we are with women in senior leadership positions now and where we were maybe a decade ago, it's great to see those strides that we continue to make. So a big round of applause, if you will, to our outstanding women leaders at WSU. Last year, we had the opportunity to do this address from the Tri-Cities. Before that, we always did them in Pullman. And I think we want to continue to rotate around to their different campuses. So just a shout out to the WSU Spokane crew for putting this on. I mean, I just simply show up, but I know all the work that went into this. We're going to have a little, some treats afterwards to eat. But thank you to Daryl and the team here for everything that you did getting ready for this. So with that, let me go ahead and move forward. And they've trusted me to advance the slides myself. So, I mean, that's, well, I think, let me start off just a little bit about some of the headwinds that are out there. It's a challenging time for public higher education, not just in Washington, but around the country. And if we read things like the Chronicle of Higher Education, or we talk to colleagues at other institutions around the country, and actually outside of the United States, we find that a lot of the trends we see are happening around the world. Public confidence in public higher education and our ability to lead in the United States has dropped an astounding 14 percentage points since 2020. Not going back 10 years, but just pre-pandemic. And I read a variety of publications that have political leanings in both directions, and you almost always see these letters to the editor and editorials there about we don't need higher education, people don't need baccalaureate degrees, and various arguments to this particular effect that maybe 10 years ago somebody said they were a little bit like the voice in the wilderness. Today, those are catching some momentum. So we have these headwinds against us about the value of a college degree and the value of a college education. About only half of the respondents to the same poll think Americans can get an affordable, high-quality education after high school. WSU, we're doing a lot in this regard, so are our colleagues at other public research universities around the country, but that message is not getting across, and it's an opportunity for us. Finally, at WSU, we're also facing our own headwinds. We announced budget reduction. We've seen flat or declining enrollments across the system. Today, there are 1.3 million less students in higher education than there were pre-pandemic. WSU seeing it just like a lot of other schools are in our state, in our region, and that's just created some stress. So what we're also doing then is nobody ever steps back and says, well, I'm going to do a little bit less. Faculty generally aren't that way, neither are administrators or leaders. But at some point, you just hit that breaking point where you're trying to do more, people are trying to do more, they're trying to achieve, trying to do a great job with our students, and you just have fewer colleagues, whether it's faculty or staff, to work on. You have less resources, and that creates tension, stress, and certainly is not a way to build up morale. I want to continue to work together with our faculty leadership, with our leadership in our departments, our colleges, and our campuses to make sure that you all have the resources that you need to do the job that you want to do, educating our students. That means great buildings. That means that you're paid what you need to be paid in reflection of the great work that you do. That means that we're producing endowments and other types of things that provide that long-lasting support to make sure that we have those funds needed for those discretionary activities that make a difference to our educational mission, but which may not be there today. So thank you all for what you do, and please know that leadership, we're going to continue to work together to make sure that we have a great WSU as a great place to work, great place to learn, a great place to play moving forward. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about our mission and what types of things that we're doing at WSU. We're a land-grant institution, and I think we're intensely proud of that. I've been at several other land-grant universities around the country. I attended land-grant university as an undergraduate and graduate student, and I think there's something special about land-grant universities and a strong desire to make sure that that land-grant university is focused around meeting the needs of our state. It doesn't mean that other institutions aren't doing that, but I think to me it's a special calling. And I remember coming to WSU 7 years ago and starting having these conversations, and I found some of our Regents faculty, professors, our highest academic rank, were focused around what are we doing as a land-grant institution. Our deans, our students, and others were also talking and maybe reestablishing a little bit of the excitement and the mission about making a difference in the state of Washington. So today, what I want to do is kind of double down on that. What are we doing in terms of our land-grant mission, or what are some modern new things that we're doing that I think are important for people to acknowledge as part of what we want to do? Now, anytime you start mentioning these things in a address like this, there's going to be something you say, well, you could have mentioned this, or what about that? In 10 or 11 slides, there are going to be some things that you would say, you know, if I was doing that, I would add to that. I want to make sure that we keep telling those stories well. But at the same time, I want to at least put out a few of these items that I think all of us can be proud of from our colleagues. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with our our Native tribe partners across the state. Talk a little bit about extension. We're going to talk about some of the things we're doing in the diversity, equity, inclusive excellence, and social justice areas. We're also just going to talk about the impact our extension agents and colleagues have all across the state of Washington. And then we'll talk at the end about some of the philanthropic success that we've seen and the people who are investing in WSU as a land-grant institution, making a difference across our state. So to begin with, when we talk about what we're doing with tribal relations, this is something that I had been in several states where, let me just say, the relationship between public higher education and the tribal nations maybe wasn't as positive as it could have been. It was a very hostile type of working environment. And I came here and had an opportunity to meet with some of our tribal partners the first time, go around the table, find out almost all of them went to WSU. They got degrees there. They want to see these partnerships really not just exist, but grow and thrive and make a difference in our state. We want to make sure that we're committing ourselves to expansion of what we're doing with our tribal communities, not just simply staying where we are and checking a box and saying we're doing that. So as part of our One WSU initiative, we moved our Office of Tribal Relations to the Office of the President to reflect that it's a system-wide initiative. Each of our campuses is doing things with their tribal communities, but we wanted to make sure that we were elevating that appropriately within our organization to say we want to be doing this everywhere across the state with our extension offices, each of our campus communities, our research and teaching centers, and places like that. So Zoe High-Eagle-Strong serves as the tribal liaison to the President and Vice Provost for Native American Relations and Programs. What Zoe has been able to do then is work with our colleagues at places like here and others that are doing really exceptional work, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the health sciences section of my remarks, but it's just, I think, important for us to continue to do that. The other thing that we got to do this last year is celebrate the 25th anniversary of the signing of the original MOU between WSU and several tribal partners. Interestingly, I'm sitting there and we're going through this, and many of you may have been there. They showed a picture of President Sam Smith's signature as the president of WSU on that, and they had several other folks that had signed that. Interestingly, of the 3 of the signatures there, 2 of those people were in the room that had signed it 25 years earlier and were still working with WSU on a very regular basis. That level of commitment is unheard of in a lot of states and communities about wanting to work together. Interestingly, I'm headed over to Seattle next month to have our next newest signatory to our MOU, and really looking forward to adding additional tribal communities to working with WSU. This last spring, the Washington State University Board of Regents ratified a first-of-its-kind policy that recognizes tribal sovereignty in relation to university research, policies, and other projects that affect tribes or tribal lands. It was developed that Zoe really led this effort based on some of the work that she saw that was done at our Arizona universities. And it took a couple years to do this because it was done in consultation with the tribes. It wasn't us just doing it, saying, here it is. But this is groundbreaking, and it's the kind of thing that maybe doesn't get the publicity it should, but this represents us wanting to say, this is a true partnership of us wanting to work with our tribal partners, and we're going to continue to look at it that particular way. We also, based on guidance from the advisory board that meets a couple times a year at the system level, WSU established a Tribal Nation Building Leadership Program to support Native student development and achievement in college and beyond that better reflect cultural values. This now system-wide program, not just Pullman, but moved out system-wide, provides scholarships for Native American students. Cultural value of reciprocity is the heart of college and career pursuits among Native peoples and nations. Education gives back to family, tribe, the natural environment, and the land itself. We've got other things that we could talk about, and I'll mention something in our health sciences space, but you can go on each of our campuses and look at what they're doing, and you see new initiatives coming apart and coming from these really great relationships we have with our tribal partners. Well, I know one of the other interesting things that WSU is continuing to do is this advancement of healthcare. And we talk about WSU being a land-grant institution and focused around Washington, but interestingly, we also have a global footprint and a global focus. Noel and I had the opportunity to visit and see firsthand some of the work that we're doing out of the Paul Allen School for Global Health in Nairobi, Kenya. We went last month, and I had sort of seen a spreadsheet that listed the number of people we have there and all those kind of things. But you sit in this room, and there's this huge conference table, and all these people are sitting around it, and you say, you know, who is this? And people said, oh, those are WSU full-time employees that are here to support $25 million worth of research expenditures every year in the East Africa area. So that's what this picture is. This is all WSU staff. And in there, I'm in the back there. I'm a short dude, so I'm not normally, in the back. There's Noel there. Guy Palmer is there, Tom Kula. And then also kind of in the back is Dean Dory Borgeson, who is Dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine, where we have the Allen School. The other thing that while we were there, I had a chance to meet 20 doctoral students that are co-advised by resident WSU faculty that are in Nairobi. So we have 200 people at different times that are on our payroll there. This is not a small operation, but this represents globally the types of things that we're doing in healthcare to understand infectious disease transmission through a whole 7 or 8 different countries that constitute the East Africa area. What's interesting to me is you go there, and when we talk to these PhD candidates, they told me, and I had to use really small words and lots of pictures. I'm an engineer. This is infectious diseases. And they said, I got to ask them, when you're done with your PhD, what do you want to do? And these students would say things like, I'm going to change the world on the way we look at infectious diseases. These are not people thinking small. And our faculty are there making a big difference. So as we look at being a global institution, it's fun to see what some of our exceptional faculty working with funding agencies and having a vision, the Paul Allen School for Global Health and what they're doing. And you just think back to when the ribbon cutting might have been for the School of Global Animal Health at that time to see what it is today. We're doing things today here on this campus that I think 20 years from now, 10 years from now, people are going to look back and say, we never thought it would be what it is. Well, we also are doing lots of things about healthcare right here in the state of Washington, and it's great that we're on our headquarters, if we can, for healthcare work within the WSU system here in Spokane. Renovate the building, and I'm going to point, and everybody online is going to go, where is he pointing to? But to the old Phase 1 building, now renamed to the Medicine Building, and just think, we're going to have our College of Medicine all in one place, in one particular building that's going to have student collaborative space, classrooms, a testing center, faculty and administrative offices in one footprint. We were able to get the legislature to provide us $15 million to do some renovation work there. I see Eric and his team is here, and they're doing great work making sure that great project. We've also raised nearly $1.5 million in private money that'll go to enhancing that particular project. And we've got proposals that either are out or will be submitted, and I'm confident we're probably going to raise somewhere around $3 million by the time that opens, just in support of the additional furniture or build out of particular spaces to make sure that our College of Medicine has the home and the classroom and facilities that they so much deserve. The Native American Health Sciences program is rolling out a certificate in Indigenous Healing Perspectives. This curriculum enhances current and future healthcare professionals' knowledge and proficiency when working in healthcare or other settings serving Indigenous communities. We talk about our core mission of rural and underserved areas and doing things differently. This is the type of thing that WSU is taking a leadership role in. Interestingly, when I was in Kenya and I was talking to my counterpart, and we were sitting with Jim Records' equivalent there, their Dean of Medicine, and we were just talking about what types of things they were doing. He said, we're trying to do this new unit to talk about indigenous peoples, indigenous health, and indigenous medicine there, using what they were learning from the tribes in East Africa and making sure that that was part of their medical curriculum for the same exact reasons. And I said, hey, we're doing the same thing in Spokane. This is an area that they're very interested in doing some collaboration on to see what different types of things we're doing, how we're doing it, and I think we can learn from our colleagues there around the world, you know, halfway around the world, two of us doing the same types of things, and I think this is where we can share best practices back and forth. This college, this campus, and our colleges of pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences, nursing and medicine are all doing great cutting-edge research. It's fun to hear from Daryl, Celestina, and other leaders here about these new types of grants that are funded and the difference that people are making in our communities. And I want to encourage you to continue to stick with that core mission, and it's great to see this campus continue to grow its research footprint, which means that we're going to have additional dollars and infrastructure here, not just building, but people and the types of things that you all need to continue to do some of that groundbreaking work. Well, we also talk a lot about extension, and this is, if you talk about land-grant institutions and our public land-grant institutions in the United States, one of the characteristics of all of them is the presence of extension. And you know, when I was an undergraduate student at Virginia Tech, you know, the one thing you knew is every county you were in, there was an extension agent there that was working with those particular communities. As I've had the opportunity to lead a couple institutions, you get to know the breadth and depth of what extension does in a really positive way. So when I was in my last institution, one of the things I dealt with a little bit was the Master Gardener program. And at WSU here, we're going to celebrate this year its 50th anniversary. But what is really significant, many people may not know, that was founded at Washington State University. So there is no extension program in the country that doesn't offer a Master Gardener program, and that was started in Western Washington by WSU. In 1973, our extension agents were trying to meet a growing demand for gardening information. They conceived a Teach the Teacher model, the start of the Master Gardener program, where volunteers were taught the latest science from WSU and in turn offered that knowledge free to the public. Now there are Master Gardeners programs across the U.S. and in Canada and South Korea. And I can guarantee if you go around most areas of the country and ask where the Master Gardener program was started, a little bit of the light under the bushel thing, right? Most people probably would not say Washington State University. This is an opportunity for us to tell a story about some really cool stuff we're doing. Interestingly, one of the things that I want to do, and as I get older and get closer to retirement, I start having my bucket list, is I want to graduate from the Master Gardener program. Right now, if I touch a plant, it pretty much turns brown, and I can't identify any of them. You know, is that corn or wheat? Well, I don't know. It's one of them. So I really want to go through the program, learn a little bit more about gardening, and be able to do it at WSU. So when I'm done being president, this is one of the things that I've got on my list to do. And what better place to do it than where Master Gardeners was started 50 years ago. I could go through every extension office and pick a couple different things that they're doing, but let me just highlight one or two. One of the important things that we found in COVID was we all assumed that everybody had access to high bandwidth connectivity. We just sort of, you know, people can work from home, right? They can all work from home, and it's all going to be great. And we found out one of the challenges right across the state of Washington is highly variable, different areas of the country and how much they have, different areas of the state of Washington, and how much rural connectivity they have in terms of high broadband opportunities. So in Ferry County, they have a mobile broadband unit that they can move around as needed for first responders, so that the first responders have all the tools they need to deal with in very rural areas that may not have the type of internet connectivity that we are used to. Skagit County, partnering with the Department of Health to start a first-of-its-kind suicide prevention program for the local farming community. A grant from the Department of Agriculture has allowed this program to expand throughout the West Coast. I could go through every particular county. I've been able to probably be at just 5 or 6 of the county offices, and it's stunning the breadth of what extension does. I find, on the coast, we're working with a shellfish farming community. We're also working around leadership development, everything in between. And each one of those counties values the presence of Washington State Extension professionals there making a difference in their communities. One of the other programs that we're really well known for, not just us, but across the country, is youth and leadership development. And here we see a couple of young people in the 4-H club. Another example, in Kittitas, Yakima, the extension agent there works with kids in Central Washington to introduce them to health sciences through art education. Kids in the 3rd through 5th grade with a focus on communities of color are exploring photo techniques that tell a science story culminating in a community art show this spring. Each of our extension places has these kind of stories to tell and these kind of local impact. So I just want to express my appreciation for our extension professionals and all the work they do in advancing the state of Washington. Often unheard of. People don't know as much about it. The further away from Pullman, sometimes you don't know as much. But if you ever have a chance to go and visit any of our folks doing that extension work, you will leave inspired by what we're doing in the state of Washington. So when I'm out visiting with industry, business across the state, across the region, places that hire WSU graduates across a variety of fields, one of the things that I hear a lot is we need people to understand data. We need people in data analytics, all these different kind of fields. This is one of those things. Anybody who graduates with this particular area can almost pick where they want to go and where they would like to work. It's great for us to produce graduates there, but the question becomes, internally, what are we doing to make sure we're using our data well for informed decision making? So a couple years ago, we stood up the Office of Strategy, Planning, and Analysis, led by Chris Hoyt. And what that group is doing is they're working with Huron Consulting, looking across all the stuff that we do with data at WSU. And the idea is, how do we develop the tools so that faculty, staff, students, and others can get data and information to assist in decision making? Now, notice a couple things here. One is to assist in decision making. Sometimes when people say, oh, if you're going to do all this data stuff, it's going to be management by spreadsheet. You're just going to be able to do it in a spreadsheet. It's going to give you a number. That's what you're going to do. What we want is data to assist us in making high-quality decisions and modeling things and trying things out. And right now, data is owned by all these different people across our system. There are certain constraints that have to be put on that. Not all data can be available to everybody. But we need a set of policies and things like that. And what Huron is doing to help us out is they're bringing best practices from a bunch of other institutions. If you want to see a place that does this really, really well, the University of Utah does a great job with this. They have dashboards. You can see all kinds of things that they're doing. They use data for a lot of their strategic decision making as an assistance. And it doesn't mean we have to be just like what U of U is doing. But I think if we look out there at some of the other really successful public research universities and some of what they use to look in terms of strategy and decision making internally, resource allocation, data plays a major role. And at WSU, we've made great progress in this, but we still have a ways to go. So we're going to continue to focus around this. Well, one of the other things that it's a really interesting time, I mentioned the headwinds around public higher education and the value of degrees. We're also seeing some really strong headwinds, particularly in higher education, around the areas of social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusive excellence. And you can look at, in the East Coast, there's some schools there. We can look at some of the challenges that our sister state of Idaho is having with this particular space. I just want to reiterate our continued commitment to social justice, to diversity, equity, and inclusive excellence across the system. We have a lot of initiatives going. We're not pulling any of those initiatives back. We have great support from the state and from our alumni and other people that these are an important part of what we do at WSU. And I just want people to know that. One of the interesting things that I think we have to do that's part of our role in education is to challenge students, challenge faculty and staff with different ways of looking at things, different ways of thinking, sometimes things that may make us a bit uncomfortable. And recently, one of the things that we were proud to host on the WSU Pullman campus was Hostile Terrain 94. a participatory art exhibit created by the Undocumented Migration Project. It's been in more than 130 cities around the world. This installation raises awareness about the realities of the U.S.-Mexican border, focusing on the deaths that have occurred almost daily since 1994. We had 18 workshops, a Foley Institute lecture with the curator of the project. A visit from the Tri-Cities Dreamers Club took place from January through March for people to participate and experience this particular art exhibit. Now, these types of things are controversial. Not everybody's going to agree with what they see. But to me, this is part of what we should do in higher education, is give people an opportunity to hear different viewpoints and be exposed to different things. This is also something that we hear a lot about in public higher education now is, you know, are we only sharing one perspective on different types of issues that are out there? I think the answer to that is no, but I think it's important for us to make sure that we don't ever decide that the way to do something and to communicate something is to shut it down and not allow discussion and dialogue across any of our campuses. So finally, if I can, before we go to questions, one of the key things where I spend a lot of my time, appropriately I might add, is if you say, what is a president's job? And, you know, Noel asks that a lot of times, you know, what is your job? What do you get paid for? Besides traveling, is to go and garner resources for WSU. That can be legislative resources, that can be federal resources, but it's also philanthropy and individual donors, companies, corporations that want to invest in Washington State University. So this last year, we've had a couple major gifts that have come through, and you all have seen some of the publicity on those, and you know, we could talk for quite a while on these, but just to mention a couple. The College of Arts and Sciences at WSU Pullman received a $1.575 million gift to establish the David G. Pollard Center for Arts and Humanities. Interestingly, this center is a virtual center. The dollars are there as an endowment, but there's not going to be a building space with a sign on it. They wanted the money to be really flexible and make sure that the dean and faculty had access to resources in this particular area. I know Darrell had some work in this particular area when he was still Dean of Arts and Sciences, but a lot of kudos to Todd Butler, our Dean of Arts and Sciences, and the fundraising team there on closing this really nice gift. We also announced earlier in the fall a $5 million investment from the Boeing Company in our new engineering building on the WSU Pullman campus. Those of people who went to engineering school in the 70s at WSU Pullman could go back today and see the same exact buildings where they were before. So we really needed to upgrade those facilities there, and the $5 million was part of a $40 million fundraising effort by Dean Mary Rezac and her colleagues as well. I could go on. Today, there was a major investment made by the Community Cancer Fund and others to enable us to do the pediatrics residency. So philanthropy is going to continue to play a key, critical, important role in what we need to do at WSU, and you should expect me as president, our chancellors, our deans, and other leaders to be out there taking the needs that are identified by faculty, staff, and students and packaging them in a way that is people willing to make an investment. We have a colleague of ours that said, I don't give a donation, I make an investment in WSU. And you can say, well, that's semantics, but I really believe that that is really the heart of most people. Today, those dollars that are coming to that pediatric residency are not a gift. They are an investment in the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine and our vision for what we want to do here. So, thank you for your attention. I'm always glad somebody showed up. To the people online, thank you for being here. I remain really optimistic about WSU and our future and where we're going to go. Whether it's intercollegiate athletics, excellence in academia, philanthropy, work with the legislature, we have a lot of positive momentum going for Washington State University. I admit, you know, some evenings I go home and I can be discouraged because we've got to deal with this issue or that issue that, you know, is all part of the job, but maybe not the stuff that gets us up and get going in the morning. But every morning I get up and I think about some of the great things that we're all doing together, and that's what keeps me going as president and makes me want to come back the next day. And if we get $5 million gift for something, I want the next one to be 10. If we do something great for the legislature, I want to go back with even a better proposal that next year. And I think that's the kind of thing that we're going to continue to do as Washington's land-grant university. So thank you, And as always, go Cougs.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Phil Weiler. I'm the Vice President for Marketing and Communications, and I am the person who's going to be able to moderate our Q&A section today. We have about 15 minutes. We do have a class that is in at 4 o'clock, so we will have a hard stop. So I will go through as many of our questions as we can. As President Schultz mentioned, this is a very busy week for WSU. This is the week that we honor students for the research work they do. This is the week that we honor faculty and staff for their achievements and for tenure and promotion. But today is an unusually busy day as well. As we heard, it's the 133rd birthday of WSU. I know folks here on the Spokane campus celebrated with cupcakes upstairs, and I know that on each of our campuses we had celebrations. We also talked about the pediatric residency program that was announced. On top of that, there was another announcement at the exact same time. This one was in Snohomish County in conjunction with our Everett campus. We'll talk a little bit about that. It's the announcement of the establishment of a research and development center for sustainable aviation fuels that will take place in Everett. So we'll just talk briefly about that. And then tomorrow, quite an honor, our athletics director, Pat Chun, is scheduled to testify before Congress. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But let me start by asking Executive Vice President and Chancellor Darrell DeWald. We did hear about the pediatric residency program. For those of us who are not part of the healthcare system, can you just explain to us kind of where does residency fit into the graduate medical education for our students, and why is this program in particular important for WSU and the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine?
So first and foremost, it is about better health for citizens of the state of Washington and then beyond. But I'm pretty loud. We'll hope this is okay. But when our medical students complete their degree, they cannot practice independently. They have to move into a residency program. And for many of you, you understand that this is a very sophisticated process. From the student perspective, it's as stressful or more so than actually in some cases getting into medical school. But they need to go through a 3 to 7 year program so that they can be independent practitioners. Now, in terms of our health sciences, if we're about better health care for citizens, we need to not only prepare those folks who complete their degrees, but we need to prepare them to be independent practitioners, and we hope that it's going to be here in the state. I'll borrow from what Dr. Record and others already know, and that is if you educate a medical student, in this case in state, about a third of them will stay in state. They'll practice in state. But if you can do the undergraduate medical education, as medical students, they complete their degree, and then you can do the graduate medical education, their residency program, you double that percent. About 2/3, even a little bit higher in some cases, will stay in the state. So it's mission fulfillment for us. Now I'm going to give a few other things, and this is what didn't come up this morning. But if you look at our state, it's a magnificent state in terms of medical education. But of the medical residencies, there's 168, 158 are on the west side of the Cascades. 10 are on the east side of the Cascades. If you look at the representation of the number of residents per 100,000 citizens in the state, on the west side, it's 4 times as much as on the east side. So we feel that this is a very important part of mission fulfillment of our College of Medicine. I will also mention that in pharmacy and also in nursing in the future, but to some degree even now, but we are developing residency programs. So the College of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences is doing the same. Back to medicine though, the 3 residency programs that they've already developed, they're ahead of schedule for a college that is only 7 years old. It's amazing that they've done this. But what you also need to know is we did it in a different way, through great leadership that's gone out there and gotten money, developed partnerships. Those monies, those philanthropic dollars flow because of the trust and relationship and the commitment to common goals. And we're finding that the community-based medical school and the community-based health sciences is a great way to build partnerships and relationships. So the funding that came for this came a very different way than most residency programs are initiated and sustained. So kudos to the whole College of Medicine team for what they've done. But this was a great celebration, and it was super fun. There were a lot of people there. We got to acknowledge a lot of folks in the health system, and we're very thankful, not only for our partner, in this case, Providence Health and Services, but others that will work with us. So great job to Jim, Nancy, the team that did this, but it is absolutely a celebration for the state.
Great, thank you. I'd like to talk just a second about the other big announcement, which was the partnership between Washington State University and Snohomish County with plans to, as I said, develop a research and development center regarding sustainable aviation fuels at Payne Field in Everett. One of the neat things about this opportunity, if it comes to pass, is it's going to include both researchers and staff members from not just the Everett campus, but also Tri-Cities and Pullman as well. And President Schultz, you talked about the importance of partnerships with regard to the pediatric residency program. Can you comment about the partnership that's involved here with Snohomish County?
Yeah, I think it's, we've got some history of working in this particular space of green, if you will, aviation biofuels, and part of a consortium of exceptional universities, including MIT and Washington State, leading this. And to me, this sort of takes the next step forward of wanting to locate this near our Everett campus. But at the same time, this is where the power of the system really comes into play, is we're going to have research, faculty, and students from Pullman, also from the Tri-Cities, where we have a lot of technical expertise, that are all going to be involved with this. And I think that's the kind of things we can talk about a system, but you start saying, wow, 3 of our campuses are collaborating and having technical expertise to help move something forward. I think that's the type of, you're going to see more and more of these types of opportunities moving forward in areas that we have really excellent faculty who are doing really groundbreaking work.
Great, thank you. I also mentioned that WSU Athletic Director Pat Chun is going to be asked to testify tomorrow to members of Congress regarding name, image, and likeness. And President Schultz, could you just explain for those of us who are not necessarily the hugest sports fans, what is name, image, and likeness, and why is it noteworthy that both Pat and WSU were asked to testify before this congressional committee?
Well, there's, and I'll try and give the very abbreviated version to this, because otherwise people need to get comfortable and the class won't be able to come in here. Name, image, and likeness really came out of a series of lawsuits filed by former student athletes about them not being able to essentially make dollars off of their name, their image, or their likeness. And if you go back, if you remember, those of you who are video gamers used to be able to play college football, and you could actually have players and stuff on the teams that were as part of EA Sports and that. And it really kind of came out of that, this idea of, if I'm going to be a student athlete and the university's selling number 4 football jerseys, why aren't I getting some particular part of that? The legal system agreed that there should be that opportunity for student athletes to profit from their name, image, and likeness. However, there hasn't been a lot of legislation put around what does that look like, what are the constraints, if any. And you may have heard of collaboratives or other types of things that are funneling dollars to these student athletes. It's all legal and above board, but it's the Wild West. And so interestingly, we're interested in pursuing some federal legislation to assist with this. And it falls, in, for whatever reason, within the purview of the committees that deal with commerce. And so it turns out on the Senate side, guess who's chair of that particular area on the Senate side? Senator Maria Cantwell from Washington. On the House side, guess who is chairing the commerce area? It is Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers. So the state of Washington is going to play a large role in what the name, image, and likeness legislation may turn out to be, given our relationship with both those elected officials. They respect Pat a great deal as athletic director of Washington State and his national stature. So it says a lot that WSU is being asked to provide, congressional testimony to talk about what types of challenges there are there and where we actually need some help and assistance from the federal government. Now, I will say this, name, image, and likeness isn't going away. This isn't to eliminate it, but on the other hand, if you look right now, there just doesn't seem to be sort of almost any adults in the room, if you want to put it that way. And we really just do need some guardrails set up, not because of the dollars or to protect the university. At the end of the day, we need to protect the interests of the individual student athletes and make sure they have the support and guidance they need to make sure that whatever deals they're doing are the kind of thing that are good for them personally and are above board. And I think that's really what this is all about, is making sure those student athletes get great advice and that there's some guardrails put up just to make sure we understand what NIL means.
Great, thank you. Before we move on to pre-submitted questions, there is an opportunity for audience participation. So for those of you in the audience, if you have a question, in a minute I'll ask you to raise your hand and shout out the question. I'll repeat it over the microphone so our colleagues who are watching on Zoom can hear what you had to say. So be prepared. But let me start beforehand and ask a pre-submitted question of President Schultz. President Schultz, this individual makes a statement and asks the following question. Strong faculty are in high demand across the country. Top universities are continuously hunting for such faculty and will poach them whenever possible. What steps are we taking to address concerns about faculty salaries?
So that's a great question. We're concerned about staff salaries and faculty salaries, and I think we're seeing a lot of turnover, just like a lot of our other colleagues do. And sometimes it's easy on these things to feel we're in some sort of a bubble, and it's unique about WSU. If President Cal State University of Washington was here, she would also talk about this as a major problem at the University of Washington. So this is not just WSU. We approached the legislature about what they're going to do with salary funds, and it turns out that we also saw the House, the Senate, and the governor's budget all have new salary dollars as part of what we're going to get. They won't be the same level that we had hoped. So the question now becomes internally, what can we do to add to those state resources to make sure that we're rewarding our faculty in that particular form or fashion? The second thing, and it's more long-term, we need a lot more faculty endowments. Faculty endowed chairs, professorships, and things like that. Those are supplements that provide additional salary dollars, and we need to be aggressive about doing that. I can guarantee if you look over on the other side of the state, you look at some of our competition in the Pacific Northwest, they're ahead of us in the number of endowed positions they have to provide some of those salary dollars. And so that's got to be part of this next campaign in terms of a fundraising initiative moving forward. So that may sound like the routine, mundane types of things, but we're going to continue to work with the legislature, provide additional dollars. With our nursing faculty in particular, we were really in poor shape with where our nursing faculty salaries were compared to not just national average, just regional averages. And it looks like the state's going to make a substantial investment in our nursing program to assist in that. So it's a combination of across the board types of things we'll be able to do for all faculty, strategic areas where we know we've got to really make some gains. Long term, we've got to be doing more with endowments and things like that to help us move forward.
You're getting close to the top of the hour, but I do want to give the folks in the audience a chance to ask a question. Anyone have a question for either Chancellor DeWald or President Schultz? All right. Oh, yes, sir.
I have a question. What is your administration doing with colleges and either in Pullman or satellites to recruit and help programs recruit faculty of color?
Yeah, so
President Schultz, would you repeat the question just so folks can?
Yeah. So the question is, what are we doing across the system largely to ensure that we're recruiting faculty of color? Is that, yeah. So when Provost and now Chancellor Elizabeth Chilton came, one of her ideas was to make sure that each year we were doing a sort of cohort of faculty around a particular area of scholarly endeavor that would tend to have a large percentage of faculty of color across the country coming out. And so we are in the third year of hiring. There's 5 a year. And what we wind up doing is there's a competition for every place across the system to be able to compete for these funds. And we provide full funding for the salary that for that tenure track faculty member. It's not a graduated thing. It's a brand new position for that particular department. I want us to continue to do that indefinitely. Not just go, well, look, we've done it for 5 years, but to continue to work in that regard. UC Davis used a very similar scheme to try and do that because we are a little constrained on what, exactly what we can do in terms of hiring. But I think so far, if I look at the demographics of the faculty we brought in the first 2 cohorts, we're definitely making a difference in this regard. So we're always open to ideas. If there's something you see at another university or something else you all have been engaged with and said, man, this worked really well, we need those ideas because there are some ways our hands are tied on what we can do on that. And if somebody else is doing it and it's working, let's try it ourselves. So, but that constitutes, I know, aside from what individual departments are doing at the really most senior level, that's really where we're focused.
So President Schultz had a slide that talked about philanthropy, and if you noticed that the 2 students in that slide were promoting something called Cougs Give. Just as a point of interest, Cougs Give this year is going to be on April 12th. It's a 24-hour event built around social media engagement and peer-to-peer ambassador sharing. It's an opportunity for us to focus on what our priorities are around giving and to really thank those folks who are generous donors to WSU. Last year, we raised $790,000 in 24 hours. That was a new record. It was a 12% increase from the year before, which also happened to be a record. If you're interested in learning more about Cougs Give, or if you would like to be an ambassador for Cougs Give, the website is cougsgive.wsu.edu. For those of you here in the room, if you'd like to continue the conversation, we're a little bit after the hour. President Schultz is going to be upstairs, as he mentioned. We'll have some cookies and conversation upstairs so we can continue what we were talking about here. But since we are at the top of the hour, I'd like to thank the Spokane campus for hosting this event. As President Schultz mentioned, I think it's his desire that we move the State of the University addresses to each of our campuses over the course of time. And I will say that our Spokane hosts have been great hosts, so thank you to the events team, thank you to the communications team, thank you to the Chancellor's office for all the work that they did. President Schultz, would you like to make any closing comments before we end today?
Well, I just appreciate everybody who's joining us online. For those of you who were joined us in person, this is the first hybrid one of these that we've done since pre-COVID. So thanks for coming out. To our faculty, staff, and students, thank you for all that you continue to do for WSU. I know the semester, we only got a few more weeks left to go. I certainly hope everybody has an opportunity during the summertime to get some refurbishment and be ready for the fall semester. It seems to me that we sort of do commencement. I wake up the next morning and we're welcoming students back. So thank you for being with us. Thanks for all you do. Go Cougs.
Okay.